Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Kristen with Elevate Healing Arts, and I'm so excited to bring today to the table Steve LeFebvre, who has already brought a lot of magic and spiritual wisdom into my life. And I'm excited for him to share more with our community in Elevate Healing Arts. So, Steve, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much, Kristen. I met Kristen at a evening at Elevate. That was, I was invited by actually my niece, who's good friends with Kristen, and my wife and I came, and we had a wonderful evening listening to the singing bowls that Kristen was playing. And the energy of Elevate was really, really inviting and really lovely. So it began a conversation that we had, which is having this little video.
Yeah.
So thank you.
And
yes,
I didn't know at the time when you were there that you were also kind of in the same work. So it was really fun to connect afterwards and realize how much we have in common and some of our shared goals. And yeah.
Yeah. Well, how I live in New Zealand. That's where I have been for the past 16 years. I was born and brought up here in the US, but through a spiritual invitation that I so happily answered, found myself in a stunningly beautiful country with incredible energy, and just stayed there for the past 16 years and came back here to see my family. I have a bunch of kids here, a bunch of grandkids here, and my mom, who recently passed away. She was 96. And it's a good place to begin with my mom and my dad, because my spiritual journey, which has been my life, we call that sadhana, the spiritual practice, started with them because my father studied to be a Catholic priest. And he kind of jumped out of that, but became a very good Catholic and had 6 kids, and I was the oldest. And my mother embodied the spiritual qualities of presence and generosity and compassion. And that was my family life. And so I chose well this time around. And spiritual practice has been my life, and it has been kind of incubated in the key parts of that life, which is family, community, service, business. And so in every aspect of that, the common ground in all of it has always been really the practice of love in action. And, that's led me to all of the things that I have done and am doing. So
that's a beautiful mission.
Yeah.
A beautiful existence.
Yeah. It's purposeful and meaningful. I think that given the chaos that is on the planet today, that there's many of us on this planet right now that we're called to build a bridge to a new paradigm of consciousness, of which Elevate is very much part of that process. And all of you that are committing to helping each other to find the healthy ways to live, And so I really acknowledge you and your compatriots in this process. So I'm happy to participate.
Thank you. Well, I feel blessed and grateful. And I know in many of our discussions, we kind of always circle back to community and what community is and what community does for us. And I know in Elevate's community that we share so many core missions and values around exploring love and compassion and healing. Can you actually speak a little bit more about your approach to community?
Yeah, very much. I mean, because it's a really huge part of my life. In fact, I've been studying and practicing and teaching around community for close to 50 years. I mean, born into a large family. I mean, again, there were 6 of us siblings, but big Italian family on both sides. So I grew up in family and with a tremendous amount of love. And I'm very mindful that that's often not the case for a lot of people. And so I feel very, very blessed. But it also has invited me into a responsibility to invite people into that energy. So it seems that in every aspect of my life, for instance, I was drawn into natural foods early on in the industry of becoming. And so I started a number of stores, and out of those stores, we developed community. So we had great, the customers were part of the family. And so that was another manifestation of that spiritual energy of family. And then from that, I got very much involved with a Benedictine community up in Bethlehem, Connecticut, called Regina Laudis, which was a community of nuns, of sisters that were absolutely brilliant and taught and initiated communities out of that facility. There was a community of actors, there was a community of nurses, there was a community. I was very much involved in the wellness community and the organic community. And the principles of community are very, very, very deep within the Benedictine culture. They're 1,500 years old. So the spiritual principles of who are we as a group, like Elevate, who are we? You know, what is the common purpose, the common thread that all of us resonate with? And, you know, how do we help each other? How do we grow together? How do we learn together? How do we pray together? How do we play together? How do we as a community interact with other communities? All of these things are, I feel and believe, that on the planet today will be the vehicle from which we begin to really network together to create this new paradigm. It's not the individual, it's not the Jesus or the Buddha or the Muhammad anymore. It is community that comes together in truth and has the capacity to nurture each other and challenge each other, because it's in that environment that we grow. And it's not an easy one. You know, these are very challenging. You know, for those of you that have been and are in relationships or have family and have kids, you know, I studied to be a monk for years. And my master used to tell us when we asked, what's the fastest way to God? Being a monk or being a householder? And he'd said, there's no question. You know, a monk goes into the cave, sits and he meditates. God only knows what he's thinking about. But as a householder, you're sitting in front of mirrors 24/7. So the challenge of becoming is a big, it's a lot of work, but it's the quickest way. So I've just brought that sense of community. I've started men's groups. I've started a number of businesses. Those businesses were all communities from the point of view that we approached it as family. We use conscious business principles of taking care of our planet, taking care of each other, whether it's a customer, an employee, transparency, being able to tell the truth quick, you know, and being able to bring quality, purpose, vision to the communities from which we're operating in. So community has been infused in everything that I do. Even though I have 4 kids, I got a bunch of grandkids, and every day it's how can I create an environment that allows for the honesty, the authenticity of being seen and heard from each of them and with each other. And that's not easy. There's lots and lots of challenges in that process, but there's no better work.
Mhm.
There is no better work. This is what it's bringing the divinity that comes through each of us uniquely to be shared and
Right.
give each other space.
And really committing to seeing love in every person, love and purpose and our shared purpose in finding love. So, yeah.
See the challenge is love brings up everything unlike itself for the
Mhm.
purpose of healing, and release. And so the context of how we hold that in relationship, in community, because life is all about relationships. So we're not taught as children and as growing up in schools, we're not taught about unconditional love. We're not taught about acceptance. We can see it playing out everywhere around us. It's all us and them. And the major shift on the planet will be when we begin to realize that we're all connected. We're all interdependent, interrelated. And once that happens, the game changes.
Yeah.
And that's the work.
And I know I say a lot in my work that the relationships are the biggest classroom, that, there's so many learning opportunities through relationships. And I'm actually thinking now back to relationship with self, right? Being such a huge relationship and such a huge learning lesson for so many of us. I'm wondering if you can speak more to how you work on healing the relationship with self, because we're going to be talking about breath, and I think it's all connected.
Yeah, that's thank you, because it's a really important key element. I mean, for me, and what I do with my clients often is I will ask them to make a list of the things that nurture you. What are the things that really make you happy? What are the things that when you're doing that or being that you're feeling energized and fulfilled and loving? And that can be like, for instance, I'm living here in a house that I have my 4-year-old grandson, and we hang out all the time.
Yeah.
So it's like when I'm with him, I'm just really present. So what brings me to presence? Whether it's meditation, taking a walk here at the beach, making love, hanging out with friends. I try to, as much as I can throughout my day, to be inviting that energy into my life. Because the other piece is like, until we begin to realize, most of the time we're looking at ourselves as an island in the ocean of life. Eventually we begin to realize that we are the ocean, and that this individuality that we call self doesn't exist. And so as we begin to deepen that understanding, everything shifts. And so the way in which I do that is in a very contemplative way, whether it's meditation or doing a yoga class or hanging out. And I would support anyone listening to this is to make a list of the things that really nurture you and make sure that you're putting them into your life each day, each week, and invite people into that. So
love that.
yeah.
Well,
My day is a prayer. My day is a prayer. It's I have to talk to my wife. She, sometimes that prayer can be tough.
yeah. Well, I absolutely. And I think we've talked about using the breath as the bridge and as a connection and as a means of pouring that love into ourselves and doing the work. So can you chat more about how you came to discover the breath as a huge pillar of healing and what you do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's interesting because most people don't even acknowledge their breath. And we can't even be alive without it. And I think that as we begin to start becoming conscious of our breath, that can be a game changer for how we are in our life. You know, for me, when I began to start learning about meditating, it was all about the breath. The breath is what helped in the beginning, which is the concentration. You know, in the meditation practice, as an example of Vipassana, before you start the meditation practice, you spend days of just watching the breath coming in and out of your nose. I mean, Anapana. You know, it's like to sit there for days and just, you begin to see things as they really are, which is what Vipassana is, insight. And so and the key to that is the breath invites me into being present. So I'm mindful of my breath a lot, whether I'm driving, whether I'm shopping or whatever. And then the use of the breath is in every spiritual tradition. And if you read any of, whether it be yogic or Buddhist or even Native American, Indian, every culture uses the breath for healing. It uses it for spiritual practice. And it's been for me, close to 50-year journey of seeing all the many ways the breath can be helpful. And for those of you that are just sitting there and wondering, like, what the heck is he talking about? Just take a couple of minutes and close one side of your nose and breathe in and then exhale, switch and do the other. Do that 10 times and watch and feel what happens. As you breathe, so your life will become. The inhale is about breathing in life. The exhale is about letting go. You know, Thich Nhat Hanh, who just recently passed away, bless him, has always been a mentor of mine. And he so often would say, breathing in, breathing out. You know, and it's just a simple process, but it is so remarkably life-changing when you begin to start becoming conscious of it. Most people breathe so shallowly that they're not even alive, because it's your oxygenation of your whole body.
Yeah.
So yeah, breath has been, I was working in my natural food store and a gentleman walked in the front door, big of a bear of a guy. And, you know, I looked at him, he looked at me, and we immediately recognized each other. We've never seen each other in real life. He was from Norway, I think. And he walked in, I looked at him, he looked at me, he says, you got to come with me tonight. And I said, okay. And we went, and I ended up at this workshop about the breath with a woman named Sandra Ray. And that took me into a journey of using the breath as a modality for connecting to source, of being able to realize and see the thoughts that create our world, to access them and to be able to let go of the ones that no longer serve me. And it's and I've been doing that, teaching that, practicing that for 40 years.
Wow. And where did you, oh, sorry, finish your thought.
No, I was just going to say that, you know, there's two principles of working with the breath that are so foundational to change, which is, number one, it's thought's creative and you're the thinker. And the other one is taking 100% responsibility for our lives. If we look at what's going on around us in our life, it is a reflection of that thought being creative. The problem is 95+% of our thoughts are unconscious. They are cellularly held in our bodies. And so we are manifesting those thoughts all the time. So if there's a lot of stuff that you don't like going on, it's about looking inside and saying, why is this happening? And what the breath does in the context of the work that I do is helping people to access that and to clear that. And that can be so beneficial. And you talk about relationships. I mean, it's like if you grew up, for instance, with an alcoholic parent, you will attract an alcoholic into your life, or you'll attract a person that has occasional drink and project them to be an alcoholic, or you will project a stone sober person and drive them to drink, all with the intention of healing that relationship. And that's the law of attraction, the law of manifestation, and the law of perception. And that's how it works. So this breath that I do, the work that I do, helps us to recognize what's happening inside of us, to bring it into consciousness. And then it invites us to change the thought. Everyone has these, what we call personal lies. I'm not good enough. I'm not wanted. I'm guilty, whatever that may be. And those are usually taken on very, very early on in our lives. And they're always running a script. And they will manifest in everything that we do. If you're not aware of it, you can't change it. The breath has been the most powerful modality that I've ever experienced that goes directly to those original thoughts and allows you to change them. So like regular counseling, you can sit there for decades, and never actually get at what's really going on. And this is not something that I do. All I do is create a safe space to use this breath modality for people to surrender to themselves. And it will become very, very clear when this happens. So it's great.
So helpful. And I notice even when I'm doing energy work with others, I can tell when there is a shift or when something's integrating, when the pattern of the breath changes. Like we aren't even often conscious of that. Because it was funny, I was going to ask you, where do you see that most people become disconnected from the breath? But I think you kind of answered that already.
Yeah. It's interesting because fear and the resultants of fear and trauma will absolutely, not only the breath will become almost resistant and painful, but in trauma, it doesn't change, it stays there. And so, trauma can be such a powerful, painful, retained experience. The breath can release that. It's I think just by the nature of stress and what goes on in the outer world, especially now, what arises is fear. What arises is concern and despair and depression and all of these things, all of which hold the breath. If when these things are happening, we can breathe into them, we begin to release them the right away.
Wow. Yeah. I know for myself, even when I'm feeling stress, I'm a shallow breather. I've actually been through, voice therapy where before we could even address my voice, my vocal cord issues, we had to address the breathing and the tension around the breath. So I personally am very grateful to have your support around this breath work. And I'd love for you to chat more about what you do in your breath work with clients, either one-on-one or we've got a group event coming up. What takes place?
Yeah, it's the first thing is that it's making people feel safe. So I work with individuals, I work with couples, I work with families, I work with groups. I do this corporately with CEOs and managing directors and things like that, because, it's initially about waking up. It's about the breath. This particular modality will get an individual directly in touch with source. And if, I've dealt with so many people that they haven't even been quiet in their life for 5 minutes, to be able to just breathe for 45 minutes is shocking. It's absolutely shocking. So it's about waking up to the energy that's going on in us. And as we know, Kristen, there's lots of modalities. And with each individual might be attracted to one particular thing or not. The breath is just another one. It's a powerful one. I say it's not for rookies. Most of the work I'm doing actually right now with other therapists and other people that are engaged in helping others, because they also need support.
Yeah.
But when I work with someone, the first thing we do is we just sit and talk a little bit, because they need to be comfortable with who I am and feel safe with who I am. And because it's all about surrendering to self. Normally, when I work with people, we commit to doing like 10 sessions. These are 10, 45 to an hour session, which is actually more like an hour and a half, because you're breathing for that much time.
Mm-hmm.
Every session is different. You'll have a different experience. It's never the same. It's about allowing yourself to surrender to self. And that usually doesn't happen right away. It takes a little bit of time to begin to let go. And then it becomes very, very powerful. It's interesting, when I work with children get it very quickly.
Yeah.
And they're not holding on to a lot. As adults, we carry so much baggage, so much fear, so much anxiety and stuff. And so sometimes it can take a little bit to do that. But so it's a courageous process. I do a lot of work with forgiveness, a lot of work with completion, because we're always unraveling family traumas, family histories, because we are so interconnected with families, with our family, also exes, whatever. It's about letting go, cutting all of the energetic ties so that energy comes back to you, and it empowers you very powerfully, so that in the world, you're able to be really present to honor yourself. I mean, almost everybody I work with would never put themselves first. They put themselves at the bottom of the list, and it's like being able to shift, to make them see and breathe into that you're the most important soul. My master used to say, the only thing that you can be selfish about is your own peace of mind. If you don't have that, you got nothing to give anybody. And if you are at peace, every single soul you come in contact with, you'll impart something very, very powerfully right to them. And so it's about shifting the energy in the breath, and you're breathing into you, and you begin to honor what you're feeling, what you're experiencing, and allowing to see that every single thing that's happening to you in your life is right for you. So part of the process is inviting people not to push the fear away, not to push the anxiety away, not to push the challenges that are happening in our life away. In fact, you want to invite them in. They're there for a reason. And if we can persevere through, and that's what the breath does, it helps us to move through that energy, because I can guarantee the other side of that are great gifts. And that's what community is all about. We all have to do our own work, but we can help each other through it.
Right.
And that's the most important thing that's I see. And so the breath helps as individuals to honor our divinity, to set aside what I call the mortal mind, the ego, to allow that divinity to come through us purely. And the ego is best used simply to have a unique expression of that divinity.
Mm.
Yeah.
Oh, it's beautiful. Now, you mentioned doing this within community and in a group setting. What could someone expect if they were to attend, say, a full day group breath workshop with you, and why? How do you think this would benefit someone?
Well, first of all, it's magical. And the reason I say that is, think about, you're opening a portal into your divinity, and having that experience is, for each individual, it's really unique. It's some people see colors and visions, and others are just so a blast of light. I mean, it's always powerful. It's always meaningful. It's always purposeful. And when one is doing it with a group of people, it's amplified. So it really gets exciting. And I think that, as people begin to be willing to trust that energy in who they are, they can begin to show up authentically. The result of that is love, it's ease, it's joy, it's happiness. So the breath invites that experience, and so it's yeah.
Well, we're very excited to host one of your breath workshops, and you had such a beautiful name for your workshop. Can you share?
Oh, it's just, it's breathing into an awakened heart. It's the reason all of this insanity is going on in the world today with viruses and climate change. And it's just, I'll put it this way. It's a very powerful invitation to remember who we really are. Not as individuals, but as a collective. There's only one of us. There's only one of this planet, and we are not separate from it. Thich Nhat Hanh speaks a lot about interbeing, that all of nature is part of who we are. There is no separation. When we hurt the planet, we hurt ourselves. And vice versa. When we are beating ourselves up, it affects the planet. And we need to wake up to this. This is serious stuff on one level. On another level, it's just all God and it's all love, but it's like we're here for a reason, and that is for the divine to experience itself through us. And so it's like, let's wake up, okay? And then let's face up to let go of the stuff that's resisting the divine to come through us. And then let's show up in inviting each other into a place of love and place of joy. That's what this is about. And I just want to work with people that want that.
Yes, it does sound magical.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I no longer work with people that I have to try to convince. There's so many people that know that they just want to get on to opening these doors and letting go and getting rid of the stuff I'm carrying around. And that's what excites me. That's what you asked before about. Where is the passion? The passion is watching and seeing people just light up and just become into who they are in a powerful way. And man, there's nothing that gives me more joy than doing that. That's what I do. I love working with kids, and it's good stuff.
We need support through that process. So many times people show up and they know they want the healing, and it's like, I hear this a lot where people say, I don't know what I'm carrying. I just know I need to release something, or I know something's off. I'm going through something. And again, sometimes it's not even consciously experienced or identified or whatever. And I think just being in a safe community and being in this group setting where we're all, again, holding space for each other to experience that. It
That's
is
fabulous. Yeah. Because, one of the nice things about the breath, Kristen, when you do this work, there's no question, did something happen? Did something not happen? You know it, you feel it, you experience it, you sense it. That's one of the things, especially for a man, because as most men, we're all up here in our heads. Women tend to, by nature, be in their bodies. So you get an opportunity to be more in touch with what you're feeling and what's going on, where men have to be kind of dragged into it, and the breath is a wonderful way to do that. But yeah, it's time. And the other thing is, I also have a lot of passion for doing this in the business community, because business is the biggest vehicle to help reach the masses. So if we can begin to get businesses and corporations to become more conscious about what they're doing and how they're doing it, then we can begin to see serious change happening really quickly. And that's why I've concentrated my work in that area, to working with CEOs and people that are in positions of governance, because if they begin to wake up, then their organizations can begin to wake up. And so I have a passion around that as well. So it's.
And I knew you were divinely placed on my path for that reason, because that is so important to me.
Yeah.
It's so important. Yeah. And I'm grateful to be, I started Elevate Healing Arts during a pandemic, but I believe it's funded by the divine. We have such a strong mission here in this healing work. And I'm just so grateful that you could share space with us and bring your incredible offerings. And I think we'll leave it there, because I think people are really excited. And I want to let our community know that we will be sharing more information about Steve's offerings, dates, and all that. And if you have questions, and if you have interest, if you have specific questions, feel free to reach out, and we can be in touch. But I'm just so excited. Steve, it's truly a gift and a blessing to have you with us.
Thank you. And I just want to, again, I acknowledge you, Kristen, and the work that you're doing at Elevate, because it's being called forth on the planet now. And one last thing, because it's easy for all of us to get caught up in what we're doing. And it's most important to, as our greatest commitment is in our being, so that we are all, first and foremost, staying connected to source in whatever way that happens. If you go back to the ways that we talk about nurturing, to just engage in those things, because that's the primary energy that shifts,
Yeah.
And I'll be here at least for another 3 or 4 months anyway. Yeah. So I'm happy to participate. Thank you so much, Kristen.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. We're going to sign off. Thank you so much, Steve. And we will be in touch. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you.